Have you ever wondered what if Modulo Yuji handled Yuji's execution instead of Gojo? In the original story, the moment young Yuji swallows Sukuna's finger in episode 1, the higher-ups want him dead. Simple as that. A vessel for the King of Curses walking around freely is not something Jujutsu society knows how to handle. Gojo steps in, takes responsibility, buys time. But in this timeline, before Gojo can say a single word, the door opens and someone else walks in. Someone the higher-ups have never seen. Someone Gojo's six eyes read in 1 second and immediately go very quiet about. Modulo Yuji, 68 years old, the version that survived everything, lost everyone, and came back with one purpose: to make sure none of it happens again. He pulls out a chair, sits down, looks at the most powerful people in Jujutsu society the way someone looks at a problem they have already solved 3 times. He does not introduce himself. He says, "I know what you are about to decide. I know why, and I know exactly how wrong you are." The room goes silent. He continues, "My name is Yuji Itadori. I am the boy you want to execute. 68 years from now. Every version of tonight where you kill him ends the same. Sukuna wins, and every person in this room dies with him. I have watched it happen. I am the proof it happened. So before you vote, you are going to listen." Gakuganji opens his mouth. Modulo doesn't look at him. "Sit down, old man. You have 4 minutes before you say something that wastes everyone's time." Gakuganji sits down. The deal takes less time than it should. Young Yuji consumes all 20 fingers under controlled conditions, one at a time, building resistance with everyone, the vessel getting stronger and harder to crack with each finger that goes down. By the 20th finger, Sukuna cannot fully take over. Then the execution happens exactly as planned. Sukuna surfaces in a dying body, reaches for control, and finds nothing to grip. He cannot hold. He burns out. No Shinjuku, no culling game, no 60 years of Modulo standing in empty rooms where people used to be. Gojo, watching from the corner, says one thing: "I'll supervise." Modulo looks at him. Something crosses between them, the closest thing to recognition that can exist when one person knows everything about someone who knows nothing about them. He says, "Good. Try not to make it weird." The vote passes unanimously. Young Yuji spends 4 days not knowing the full picture. He knows he swallowed Sukuna's finger. He knows he managed to push back, which surprised everyone, including himself. He knows Megumi showed up, and then a blindfolded man showed up, and now he is in a car going somewhere nobody will explain. Then Modulo gets in. Young Yuji looks at him for a long moment, says, "You look like my grandfather." Modulo, "I look like you, 50 years from now." Young Yuji stares. Then, "Are you strong?" Modulo, "Yes." Young Yuji, "Stronger than the blindfolded guy." Gojo, from the front seat, "He's not stronger than me." Modulo says nothing, keeps his eyes forward. Young Yuji watches both of them and decides this is the strangest situation he has ever been in. But underneath the curiosity, something heavier. The person next to him is him, the version that survived decades of things going wrong, that kept getting up anyway, that eventually became something the original era of Jujutsu never produced. He wants to ask what it costs to become that. He does not ask yet. Some questions need time before they can be answered honestly. Training begins the next morning. Modulo runs it the way a man runs things when he has a precise deadline and zero margin for wasted time. Young Yuji learns Black Flash in 2 weeks, not because Modulo drills the technique into him. He teaches the feeling behind it, the specific internal condition that makes Black Flash possible, and young Yuji finds that condition faster than Modulo found it at 15. This surprises Modulo. He says nothing about it. Megumi trains alongside and notices almost immediately that Modulo watches him differently, longer, more carefully, with an attention that seems to go slightly past the present moment. Megumi asks why. Modulo says, "No reason." Megumi does not believe him, but does not push it. He has figured out that pushing Modulo produces exactly the information Modulo intended to give, and nothing else. Nobara joins and decides within the first hour that she and Modulo have a fundamental personality conflict. She is correct. She is also one of the only people whose questions he actually answers properly, because her questions are specific and he respects that even from people he finds difficult. The 3 of them train harder and more precisely than they did in the original timeline. Modulo knows exactly what each of them will need to survive what is coming. He points them at it without explaining why. One night, 3 weeks in, young Yuji finds Modulo sitting outside after training, alone, not moving. He sits nearby without asking. They sit there until the cold makes going inside makes sense. Junpe. This is where Modulo makes his first move that nobody else would have thought to make. In the original timeline, Mahito gets to Junpe first. Nobody reaches him in time. Modulo reaches him 2 weeks before Mahito's plan begins. He finds Junpe sitting alone at school in the specific way Modulo recognizes, because 68 years of being the last one standing teaches you exactly what that kind of alone looks like, and sits nearby without explanation. Junpe Junpei asks what he wants. Modulo says, "Nothing. I just know what happens to people who sit like that when nobody sits with them." Junpei looks at him for a long moment. Then he moves over slightly on the bench. It is not an invitation exactly. It is the closest thing to one he knows how to offer. They talk sometimes after that, not about anything important, just enough that when Mahito shows up 2 weeks later, he finds Junpei in a different situation than the one he required, and he finds Modulo standing between them with the specific stillness of someone who has been waiting a very long time for exactly this moment. The fight is not dramatic, it is efficient. Mahito is dangerous, but Modulo carries 68 years of understanding exactly where Mahito's overconfidence lives, and what his technique cannot do to a soul reinforced past the point of easy entry. Mahito escapes, barely, messily, leaving pieces of himself behind, his development set back in ways he will not fully understand for weeks. Junpei is alive, his mother is alive. Modulo does not tell him how close it was, and he never will. October 31st. The veil drops over Shibuya. Gojo enters and starts doing what Gojo does, which is making everything in front of him stop being a problem. Jogo intercepts young Yuji before he can reach the civilians. In the original timeline, this is where things start going wrong. In this one, Modulo is already positioned exactly where he needs to be. He steps into Jogo's path. Jogo reads the cursed energy signature and goes still for 1 second, because even Jogo, who has fought Gojo, recognizes when something in front of him is operating on a different scale. That second is all young Yuji needs to push past and reach the civilians. He clears them, comes back, and what follows is something the original timeline never produced. Young Yuji fighting alongside the 68-year-old version of himself, a synchronization that should be impossible and somehow is not. They do not communicate. Young Yuji moves and Modulo has already accounted for where he will be. Jogo burns faster than before. Then Hanami appears. Young Yuji is already reading the angle before the branches fully extend. Modulo closes the exit. Hanami is gone in under a minute. Then the prison realm appears, not aimed at young Yuji, at Gojo. The box closes. Young Yuji says, "We could have stopped this." Modulo says, "I tried. I warned him months ago. He walked in anyway because that is who Gojo is. He goes in. He handles what he can handle, and when the prison realm closes, it closes because of a decision only he could make and I could not make it for him." Young Yuji looks at his older self's face and sees something he did not expect. Not calculation, something that looks like grief that has been carried a long time and accepted but never fully set down. Young Yuji says, "We'll get him back." Modulo, "I know. That is why I did not stop it." They stand in the wreckage of Shibuya and the night gets quieter and neither of them says anything else for a while. Mahito is still out there. Kenjaku is still moving. The work is not done, but Jogo is gone. Hanami is gone. The massacre that happened in the original timeline did not happen here, and Nanami is alive, and Nobara is alive, and the first domino was never placed. The finger consumption proceeds through the following weeks. Controlled, one at a time. Modulo present for every single one. Sukuna surfaces on the 9th finger and looks through young Yuji's eyes and sees Modulo standing across the room and goes completely still. Says, "You." Modulo, "Me." Sukuna, "You should not exist yet." Modulo, "No, but here I am." Sukuna, "You came back to stop me." Modulo, "I came back so he does not have to do it alone." Sukuna is quiet for a moment. Then, "You think that changes anything?" Modulo, "I think it already has." Sukuna retreats, not from fear, from the intelligence of something that recognizes when the board has changed in ways it needs to fully understand before its next move. Young Yuji afterwards, "What did that feel like? Talking to yourself inside yourself." Modulo, "He is not me. He is what I was carrying. There is a difference." Young Yuji thinks about this for the rest of the day. The execution room is smaller than young Yuji expected. He stands in it and his mind goes to his grandfather. Wasuke telling him to die, surrounded by people, and whether this room counts when the people in it are here to observe rather than grieve. He thinks about Megumi, who has never once looked at him like he was temporary. About Nobara, who treats everyone like they should be grateful she is speaking to them, including him, and how that somehow became one of his favorite things about her. He thinks, "I have not known them long enough." That is the weight, not fear of dying. The grief of a story getting cut short before it became everything it was going to be. Modulo is standing in the corner. Young Yuji says, "Are you scared right now?" Not asking for himself, asking for Modulo, who has to stand in this room and watch a version of himself go through a door. Modulo says, "The first time I died, I was alone. Nobody in that room knew what I was giving up." Young Yuji looks at him, understands what that means. He is not alone. That is the difference between then and now. The procedure begins. Sukuna surfaces the moment the vessel starts failing and reaches for control with everything he has, and finds a container so precisely prepared, so deliberately constructed for this exact moment that there is nothing to grip. He cannot hold. The body collapses. Sukuna burns out in the dying vessel. faster than anyone in that room predicted, and the fingers go inert, and the plan, the one that took 68 years and an impossible journey backward through time to build, works. Young Yuji opens his eyes in the recovery room. Modulo is in the chair next to the bed, not reading, not doing anything, just there. Young Yuji says, "Did it work?" Modulo, "Mostly." Young Yuji, "Mostly." Modulo, "Mahito is still operating. Kenjaku is still moving pieces. Gojo is sealed but retrievable. The path to Angel exists. The sequence is intact. It is not over." Young Yuji, "But different." Modulo, "Yes." Young Yuji, "Better?" Modulo looks at him, at a 15-year-old who just survived his own execution, who has 68 years of becoming ahead of him, who is already more than Modulo was at this age without knowing it. He says, "Ask me in 68 years. Young Yuji smiles, not relief, the smile of someone who has just understood something important, that the person sitting next to him became extraordinary because he was forced to, and that he gets to choose it. That is not a small difference. He looks at the ceiling, says quietly, "Was it worth it?" Coming back, all of this. Modulo thinks about Nobara, alive in this building right now. Junpei going home to his mother tonight. Megumi, who will never know what was waiting for him in the version that actually happened. He says, "Ask me when it is over." Young Yuji, "That is not an answer." Modulo, "No, but it is the honest one." The room is quiet. Outside, Mahito is somewhere and Kenjaku is planning and Gojo is sealed in a box and the world is still mid-disaster. But in this room, the 15-year-old is alive and the 68-year-old sitting in a chair next to a bed in a recovery room. Drop the next scenario in the comments. I'll see you there.